Welcome home, neighbors.
Welcome home, neighbors.
Hello, neighbors.
We're listening from
Arizona,
Florida,
Maryland, New York, New Jersey,
Indianapolis,
California, Utah,
Michigan,
Iowa, Massachusetts,
Georgia, Canada,
our home resort is
Animal Kingdom,
Polynesia,
Bay Lake Town,
Old Key West,
Olivia,
Boardwalk,
Alani Resort,
Hilton Head,
Boulder Ridge,
Copper Creek,
Grand Floridian,
Saratoga Springs,
Beach Club,
and Wilderness Lodge.
and you're listening to
and you're listening
You're listening to my
Well, welcome home, everybody, to the Sunday, July 9th edition of My DVC Points Community Hall Live Podcast. I do this so often, I have to check the watch every single time I do that, just to make sure I get that right. So anyways, we've got a really great show lined up for you tonight and a really great special guest. I would like to welcome to the show, Dan Cockerell. How you doing today, Dan?
Good, Chad. We've been spending a lot of time together this week.
I'm telling you, we've got a podcast out. We had Mouse Quiz, and now we're doing our Sunday night live show. And it's all because you got a new book coming up. And tell us a little bit about the book, Dan.
Well, it comes out on Tuesday, August 11th. It's been, I've learned that all books get released on Tuesdays. I'm not sure why, or at least mine is, but it is, it's a whole, it's 220 pages. So it's a good sized book, and it talks about, kind of areas that I identified over my 26-year career at Disney that are leadership sort of tips regarding leading yourself, leading your team, leading your organization, and leading change. And lots of Disney stories in there, lots of career stories. And I really targeted it to maybe up and coming leaders who are now taking on teams and just trying to figure out how to be effective in leading teams. But it's hopefully I've been able to take all my successes and errors and mistakes over the past 26 years and package it up and maybe give everyone a little bit of a head start if they decide to read it.
Awesome. I know I've started the book and I am like hooked. Okay. I cannot wait till the audio version comes out because I don't like reading and pages or ebooks or anything along those lines. Yep. I love audiobooks. Hence, that's why I'm a podcast guy.
There you go. Well, the audiobook is completed. It's been turned into Morgan James, the publisher. It'll probably come out towards the end of August. And I did the introduction to the book. And then Jody Mayberry, my partner who does my podcast with me, did the narration of the book. And we put in some bonuses in there for especially for people who like audiobooks that isn't in the paper copy. So it should be fun.
Ooh, bonus content.
Content.
We're all about the bonus content here. Yeah. And I know if people order the book from your website, there's some bonus content there as well, right?
Yeah, that's right. I've, the past 2 years, I was always an operations guy. I've learned a lot about sales and marketing and online, how to program. And someone told me bonus content is great. You can really get people's attention, and it's a lot of fun. So there's some good extra stuff electronically you get once you purchase it.
Gotcha. That is awesome. And I need to do a reminder to everybody, if you can, subscribe, like, share out the show. We've got some really great information tonight. And how often do you guys get a chance to have open question and answer time with a Disney executive? Okay. So that's kind of what we're going to do tonight, is come in with some questions and answer. And then I have some transition questions to get us back into the leadership mindset for everything else. But we really wanted to take some time to let fans just come back in and ask the questions. So Dan, if they missed the podcast this week, can you give us a short synopsis of career history as well?
Sure. Started on the college program after my sophomore year in college and worked at the Contemporary Hotel. And as we were the other night on our trivia show, someone had worked at the Fiesta Fun Center, which is right around the corner, which is now the Wave restaurant. So that brought back some old memories. So I did that for a summer, and then I went back to school for 2 years. When I graduated, I came back to Disney 1991, and my first full-time job was parking cars at Epcot. Which is the hardest parking lot to park at Walt Disney World. They have the super long rows. So you learned a lot there. And did that for 6 months and then went to France and got there on January 1st, 1992. And we opened the park in France 3 months later, April 12th. And so ended up living there for 5 years, working frontline management roles, and then moved back to Florida in 1997. My wife and I, and by that point, we had our son had been born in France in 95. And then spent the next 22 years at Walt Disney World working in parks. I was in hotels for about 6 years and then went back to parks. And my last 3 roles with the company I was vice president of Epcot, Disney's Hollywood Studios, and then Magic Kingdom for 3 years. And then during that time, I went back and got my MBA, and we had 2 more kids. So it was a busy time. And then 2 years ago, left Disney, and now my wife and I are consulting, and all our kids are out of the house. Well, one's back for school, but eventually he'll leave again. We'll see. And we're sharing what we know now about culture, about service, and just, the 19 different jobs I was in. We learned a lot about how to run business and customer service.
Awesome. And then also, I think a key point that would be of interest to our audience as well is you were the general manager at Wilderness Lodge for a while as well, right?
That's right. And it was that was my first general manager role. I had been the operations manager at the All-Star Movies Resort. I was running front desk and housekeeping, and that was my first GM role. So I learned my first 2 years as an executive, I got to learn the ropes at the Wilderness Lodge and the Fort Wilderness Campground. Those were both my responsibilities, and it is a very special place. One of the best jobs I ever had.
Yeah, and we like it as well because, you're talking home to us. We're DVC owners.
Sure.
Wilderness Lodge is one of my home resorts, so we are definitely talking home as well.
Yeah, I learned a lot about DVC when I was there. In fact, when I got there, I went to the sales center and went through the whole sales process because I wanted to be familiar with how they sold it, and it kind of sells itself. I was impressed. At the end of it, they kind of do the math, and you're like, why didn't I do this earlier? So it's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, we're all pretty fond of it here as well. So in tonight's show, we're going to come back in with a new format. We're going to start something off as well. So if you guys have a question for Dan, to just separate the questions from the comments and help Gina and I start to triage them a little bit better and make sure we get to the actual questions. If you could start off in capital letters with question : and then put your post in there with a question from Dan. And I'm going to welcome back up to the show as well our co-host. So let's welcome back Vicki. So, hey, Vicki. And then we're going to also welcome back in Sandy as well. And these people Sandy and Vicki have started us off with some starter questions here. So I'm going to go ahead and find their comments here in the stream, and we will kick them off. And I think Vicki's question here was, how can we bring the magic when planning our Disney vacations? Or I guess I could let you say your question, Vicki.
No, it's fine.
Yeah. Tell me more about that question, Vicki. How can you bring the magic?
So the part of your book is about you need to take care of yourself first, to really bring the leadership qualities out to everyone. It starts with you, and that includes relaxation. So what's the best way to relax at Disney? Because you have experienced both taking care of yourself to be a leader, and also all the cool stuff on property, ways to just really relax, like maybe at the resort.
Yeah. I'll tell you, it's a great question. I think, well, let me share a story before I answer this question. We, back when we were getting ready for the My Magic Plus launch, spent $1 billion putting in RFID and the app and all the online Fast Pass. And we had a group of senior leaders and executives actually go book. They did the full vacation, Walt Disney World vacation. We gave a few of them and said, okay, you're not going to actually fly in, but we're going to drive you out to the airport, and you're going to bring Disney's Magical Express in and arrive at your hotel. And you all are going to be driving from, an out of state and arrive here. And you all are going to be domestic, maybe from Florida. And so we had about 6 or 7 families who went on vacation for a whole week at Walt Disney World. And they did everything that a guest would do. And, I'm sure people would ask, why would you do that? You all know it happens. We don't know what a vacation looks like from a guest point of view to that length. And there were so many learnings that came out of that. And a few of the learnings were, they watched the commercials. They got lots and lots and lots of emails. We realized how many emails we sent people. We started to say, maybe we need to look at that. But one of the things that came out is, if you watch the commercials, some of them say, you know what, you can do all 4 parks in one day. You can do all the parks. And so they actually did what the marketing said they should do. At the end of the week, they said, we were exhausted. We were done. Our kids were crying. And so we had to rethink how we're sort of telling people to do a vacation at Disney. And I think it's a lot of people, it's kind of like time is money. I only have so many hours there, so I'm going to pack in as much as I can. And I personally think you really should be more reasonable. You're down there to relax, and you're not, and so I think my perfect day there is if you're morning people, get up early, go do some of the parks, enjoy it with your kids, come back to the hotel, have lunch, maybe go to the pool, have some relaxation time, and then maybe go out in the evening again for a couple hours and don't go to bed too late. And that seems like a good way to do it. I've seen more families have meltdowns. People are shaking their kids. We brought you here. You're going to enjoy the fireworks.
Do you know how much I spent to bring you here?
Yeah. I spent all this money to bring you here, and all you want to do is swim in the pool. You can swim in the pool anytime. So
awesome. I think we might have had a little bit of an internet spike there. So Dan could be lagging out with that one. So that's a really good question there as well.
Oh, he's back.
Oh, you're back.
I'm back.
So Dan, we lost you at the kid going, you can't spend all the time in the pool part. Okay.
Yeah. So I think you just got to be, just focus on enjoying your stay, enjoying your family, enjoying the surroundings. Let everyone do a little bit of what they want to do, and don't do the forced march. That's my opinion. I know that's hard for people because sometimes this is the one chance they're going to get to come down. And so they want to pack it all in. But you do want to create some nice memories. And if everyone has sleep deprivation, that's hard to do. So, take some time just to relax and enjoy each other besides the attractions and parks. So.
I guess
That's
that's
awesome.
one of the luxuries that we have as DVC members, right? A lot of us, that's how we now vacation, because that first trip was that, we're going to have this as a one and done. That's it. Exactly. And then once you get into DVC, you realize that there's so much to explore, and you can slow it down and enjoy that time with the family.
That's right.
I will get it next trip. It goes from a scarcity mentality and it shifts over to an abundance mentality is what the members have. Because we're looking at, we got another 30, 40, 50 years to go take in all this stuff, right?
Exactly.
We don't get it now, we'll get it next time, right? So,
and the other thing I've found is if, a lot of people say this is kind of strange, but to keep to, it's easy to sort of overdo everything, eat too much, do everything too much. And after a few days, you kind of start to feel kind of bad. And I think it's important. We've been on the cruise a few times, and I've really had to discipline myself. All right, let's exercise every morning so we feel better. Let's kind of have some moderation and only have some really good food at certain times of day. And, because it's that lack of things that makes you enjoy things more. And overabundance is good, but when you do too many days in a row, you don't feel as good. So having a little bit of discipline, I think, is still important.
awesome. And Holly comments here is that she's trying to learn to vacation that way.
Yeah.
And then her husband, Dan, chimes in right behind her, says, don't worry about the fear of missing out. Right, Holly?
The old FOMO. I'm familiar with it.
Let's come back in and Sandy, did you have a question you wanted to ask?
I was going to say to Dan, I think that's a great principle. And I know that you talk about that a lot, about how you have to kind of take care of yourself first, and then things will evolve from that point. So do you want to talk a little bit more about that point and how your philosophy is on that?
Absolutely. The funny thing is, I've always been a big fan of this, and you've probably heard this before in books but they always talk about, when you think about on an airplane, the same safety spiel every time. And the one they always talk about is if an oxygen mask drops and we lose pressure, put the mask on yourself first before helping others. Because in fact, if you help others and you pass out, the others who can't help themselves, you're all going to be in trouble. And a lot of people don't think about it that way. They're always going to sacrifice for others first before taking care of themselves. And it's counterintuitive. But the fact is, if you are fit, you get some exercise, get your heart rate up. Evolution has told us we're supposed to get our heart rate up, and you don't have to be a triathlete, but at least get out and walk, whatever your exercise is going to be. You're going to feel much better. As you get older, you're going to feel better and have a great style of life. And then, the basics, sleeping, getting enough sleep. I mean, how many people do you know that just say, I got 5 hours of sleep last night, I got 6 hours? That's not healthy. And when you're not paying attention to yourself, you're not a good spouse. You're not a good father. You're not just everything plays against you. And we actually thought about putting this whole section of the book at the back, because the publisher said, people are looking to see a business book and you're going to talk about the stuff they kind of already know. And I said, I'll tell you, I agree with you, but we're going to keep it in the front of the book because I know everyone knows it. but it's reminding them that these are real things. And just
You got
because
to do it.
doesn't mean you're
Yeah.
doing it. Eating in moderation, is that's something I learned in France, living there for 5 years. All the portions are smaller. Everything is just smaller, and you enjoy things more, and you take your time, and meals last longer. That's what I learned over there is, it's not a race to get your meal done. Enjoy the time, eat slower, enjoy every bite you take. And you can teach your kids that. Hydrating, just drinking enough water. This is another basic thing that a lot of people don't do. I just saw a documentary on some athletes. They were trying to see if someone could break the 2-hour marathon, and they brought these professional marathoners, and their Nike sponsored it, and they were doing all these tests. It turns out one of the professional marathoners, one of his basic problems was he wasn't hydrated enough. And you'd think a professional would know that, much less regular people. But that's a big deal. Managing stress, emotional intelligence is important. How do you just take time to really settle down, keep things in context?
Especially these days.
People are so on edge today, and they just the kind of people overreact to little things, and you just got to take yourself back and get your mind in the right place that you can handle things. The mind is really powerful, and it plays tricks on you. I'll be laying in bed. It does it to me. I'll be laying in bed. I wake up at 2 a.m. worrying about something, and by 4 a.m. the problems become 10 times bigger. And the only thing that changed was I laid there for 2 hours. So it's like you just got to get your arms around that. And there's ways to do that. They talk about meditation, getting yourself to just focus and step away from all the ideas running through your mind and just become an observer. And your mind's a muscle, and you can work on that. And then lastly is organizational fitness, time management, just spending your time in the right place, and then using your time wisely. There's so many people run around, and they're just always in this panic mode. And all you have to do is put a basic process in place to remember things. I fully take advantage of Siri. My wife and I, we walk the dog every morning, and we talk about what we're working on for the day. And Siri's right there, and she'll mention, "Oh yeah, we're going to go fly here. We need to book something. Hey Siri, remind me at 3:00 this afternoon to book that flight." And I have a system, and it's not glamorous, but I'm very seldomly kind of having to like at the last minute book a restaurant for St. Valentine's Day or for my anniversary, because I have reminders to make sure I get ahead of that, and it just improves my lifestyle, improves my relationships. So I think there's a lot of those basic things that you just got to think about. And I turned 51 in February. As you get older, you start to realize you are not invincible. Everything starts when you're younger. You can stay up all night. You can eat whatever you want. You never have to exercise. You don't have to follow any rules. But eventually it gets to a point where you just really got to focus on that. And I just want to talk to people about that. And hopefully, I'm not telling them to be saints, but at least, as the kids that are born today are going to live to be over 100 with the technology that's coming. And I think quality of life's important. And it's hard to think ahead that far. But I was 22 like yesterday working at Walt Disney World on the college program, and I blinked. And I'm 51. Time goes by fast.
Yeah, that's great points there. Thomas wants to know, is there any management tips learned from leading a truly multicultural team at Epcot? Cast members from around the world, sprawling grounds, a monorail runs through it. And did you have to thank the Phoenicians?
All right. There's a lot of Easter eggs in this question. That's good.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're referring a little bit to a river runs through it, but that sounds a lot like that. Yeah. Epcot. Well, first of all, I have a history with Epcot. It was my first job working in parking. I worked there as a frontline manager in guest relations. I worked there as an operations manager running the American Adventure and the Japanese pavilions, and eventually the Italian and German pavilions. And then I went back. My last job there was the vice president of the park. So I got to know that park inside out. And I'll tell you, one of the big advantages of leading a multicultural team or working at Epcot is you can find a spouse, which I did. So my wife is from Lyon in the south of France, and she actually worked at Epcot. She was the first one in her whole family to work for Disney back in 1987, and she worked there for a year on the fellowship program, and then she came back a couple years later to train for Euro Disney, and that's when we met. But I had some incredible experiences working at Epcot. I would say probably half the pavilion there are run by operating participants. They're not even run by Disney. And hopefully a lot of people don't know that because they hold themselves to the same quality standards that Disney does. The really cool thing is the story behind each of the pavilions. Ricky Debler runs the food and beverage operation in the Mexican pavilion. His family was very famous in Mexico City for having the San Angel Inn, that's the name of it in Epcot, but it's a really famous restaurant in Colonial Coyoacan. And he was 19 years old when he left Mexico and opened the restaurant in the Mexican pavilion at Epcot. And he's been there ever since.
Wow.
And so he started that. And the two gentlemen from Morocco, the Rashids, they run the food and beverage operation there. And Disney found them in Morocco and said, we want you to come over and open this because we want it to be authentic.
Wow.
Paul Bocuse and a couple other chefs opened the French pavilion, and they run the food and beverage operations there. And Paul Bocuse is kind of like the rock star chef of France. He was the first celebrity chef and ran that area, and they do a great job. And then Mitsukoshi has an incredible store. They opened their first department store in Tokyo, and I want to say 1480. I can't remember the exact date, but it was in the 1400s. They opened their first Mitsukoshi department store in Tokyo, and now they have a huge, very famous store in Tokyo, and they run the food and beverage and the merchandise operations at the Japanese pavilion. And to tell you the truth, if Disney could run as well as Mitsukoshi does, we'd be even better because they are incredibly disciplined. Their service is fantastic. And so I got to interact with all those people and meet them, become friends with them. And it was fun to, work with people outside of Disney because, when you're Disney, you're pretty insulated, but to work with other entrepreneurs is pretty cool. And all those kids who come from all over the world and spend a year living in the United States and learning and working here and go back to their countries, there's a lot of connections. And actually my wife still stays in touch with most of the people she worked with. In fact, they had their 30th reunion last year, and they all came to Orlando, and about half of them showed up. So there's about 25 of them, and they had a big party, and they went to Epcot and celebrated, and they brought their kids with them. And so it's a pretty cool thing. Lots of heritage and tradition. So great question.
Yeah. Lauren wants to know, what was your most challenging position, and what did you learn from the challenge?
Yeah. I would say working at the All-Star Resort was probably my most challenging position. I got to work in hotels for 6 years, and the rest of my time at Disney, I worked in parks. And as I kind of joke with people, I say, no one ever called my office at Magic Kingdom to complain, guests, because they don't know who's in charge there. It's the theme park. And who do you go to? Well, you go to guest relations, and they usually handle things. Everybody in the world knows there's a general manager of a hotel, and they would find me. And so that's the first thing. You would get on the phone with someone personally and have a conversation. And it was tough because people are, they're looking for fantastic vacations. They've been saving up for a long time. And when you work at somewhere like the All-Star that has almost 6,000 rooms, things go wrong. When you have 500 housekeepers show up every day, you have to say, okay, how many rooms are going to be cleaned perfectly? And as I mentioned the other night on our show, I said, if at the All-Star you clean 99% of the rooms perfectly, you have 57 dirty rooms. That's a lot of dirty rooms at 99% perfection. So you're held to the attention to detail in the hotels is a whole nother level.
Oh yeah.
I think the theme parks, it's magical. You're overwhelmed by the sights, and you probably don't notice everything that's not working well. But when you go back to your room every night and you have to take a bath and shower and your kids are there, and you notice all the little details, the dust, did they vacuum? Did they wipe everything down? It's a very intimate space. So I got a real respect for housekeeping and how important their job was. And I learned to show them a lot of love. I would show up 3-4 days a week at the we call it breakout in the morning when all the housekeepers show up to get their assignments. I would be out in the hallway, shaking hands, talking to people. Over 95% of our housekeeping team, English was a second language. So they all were from either spoke Haitian Creole or French or Vietnamese or Spanish. And they were it was fantastic. I learned a ton from them. They were the hardest working people there. At the All-Star, they cleaned 18 rooms a day, and they loved their jobs. And the great housekeepers just loved. And when I went out in the operation to see rooms, they'd yell, Dan, come look at my rooms. And I'm like, I don't need to look at your rooms. I know they're perfect. I want to go look at the rooms. The person is not calling me to come look at the rooms. So that was, I think what I realized the All-Star is you can probably manage and hold people accountable to 80%, but then you just have to trust the housekeepers are going to do their jobs, and you need to support them. And, you as they say, you catch more flies with honey than vinegar. And I learned over time at Disney, if you treat people with respect, you train them, you encourage them, you get really fantastic results. And I think that idea of, are you looking for compliance? Are you looking for commitment? And I think people who are committed do a much better job than people who are just complying with the rules. And that's what I learned at the All-Star, because I couldn't be there enough to make sure all the rooms are clean, but I was certainly held accountable to make sure they were. And so it was truly a team effort.
Yeah. So you shoot for commitment, building commitment, as opposed to, micromanagement.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's great. Dan asked this question, and it looks like he's wanting to know, based on the popularity of the Osborne lights, was there any place else that you guys could have moved this in any of the 4 theme parks? And what was the decision like to pull that out? Okay.
Yeah.
And is there any hope that it would return? Because it always brought a lot of foot traffic back into Hollywood Studios. Not that they need any more today. Okay.
Right. Yeah. This is, I'll tell you, this was one of the challenges. This is another big challenge at Disney. So many memories have been created there, and people have these, these things they hold sacred in their families, these family and memories, that when you change things, it's really hard. And what happens is people say, I want it to be just like it was last time, because that's where I feel comfortable and I want to go relive that. But then they also say, but you know what? I also want new things, because I just don't want to have to do the same thing every time. So you're walking this line between honoring the heritage and tradition and honoring we need to be innovative and create new things. And we had been talking about it for a few years, and we knew that some big changes were going to come to the studios a few years before we even got under construction. So we had to start thinking ahead, because we didn't have room to put the Osborne lights. Now, I guarantee you, we had discussions when I was there about putting them on Hollywood Boulevard. And obviously we went in a different direction with the projection and a lot of that. And that's been very popular. At one point, I think we played around with the idea of doing something at Disney Springs and doing a Osborne lights down there. So there was a couple different concepts, but eventually the decision was made. All right, these assets are getting really old. And I know there's a lot of love for those, but we're also seeing that people, projections coming, there's all kinds of technology coming. And so at the end of the day, I'm not going to tell you whether you should judge it as a good decision or not, or the right decision. Yeah. Everyone can have a different opinion about it. But we made the decision to move on from there. And as I shared the other night, I actually flew with an entertainment manager. We flew to Little Rock, Arkansas to have a dinner with Mrs. Osborne and talk to her about it. She knew that it was coming, but we really wanted to pay her respects and just tell her, how many lives their family had really created magic moments for. And they were fantastic. They both lived larger than life. That was kind of the story to it.
Awesome.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And then Margie wants to know, what would you say would be the highlight of your career at Disney?
Wow. That's a tough one. And I can't answer that, because over 26 years, you just have so many great things happen and so many moments and ups and downs, to tell you the truth. There's times when you just are like, what am I doing here? Should I be in this job? It's a tough job to be in, and you're always second guessing yourself, and the pressure's there. But just, I don't have one individual highlight. I have some good stories for you, I could tell you, and I'll tell a couple of those, but I think my highlight was just, as I moved up in my career, the ability to see cast members and empower them and congratulate them and really make them feel special about what they were doing. Working every job in the world is hard. I don't care where you work, but Walt Disney World, expectations are off the chart. You are under the microscope all the time, and you're held to a really high standard. And that's why people work there, because they like being held to that standard. But the highlights for me were showing up in the cafeteria and having lunch with a group of cast members and chatting with them and buying them lunch, or, stopping in my car and picking up someone on the way in and giving them a ride to work. Just those little moments that I think Disney really, respects everybody and realizes that everyone contributes to the plan there. that was probably a great thing. Now there was all kinds of cool things. I mean, standing many times on Main Street USA at 5 a.m. with just literally no one there, and just being like, this is pretty cool. This is pretty neat. And showing up for the dress rehearsal for the parades at 2 a.m. and watching them go by with no one on the street and watching a full parade play out. The experiences at Disneyland Paris. I was able to spend this was back in 1995. I was working in guest relations as a frontline manager. And this was when Space Mountain opened in France. And it also happened to be the 25th anniversary of the moon landing. And those sort of all came together in the marketing campaigns. And Buzz Aldrin was sort of the representative. Neil Armstrong didn't really get out, and he wasn't really into the media, but Buzz Aldrin certainly was. He was the second man on the moon. And I got a call, and they said, hey, Dan, we'd like you to spend the week with Buzz Aldrin and his family, make sure he gets to all his events on time, and do whatever he needs you to take care of. So I got to spend the whole week with Buzz Aldrin and his family and chat with them and talk with them. And I drive home every night and look at the moon. I'm like, I hung out with the guy that was on that planet. I mean, it's pretty neat.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was cool. It was neat.
And well, related to that question, Scott asked, of all the different positions you've had the chance to hold, what was the funnest job you got to do and chance to enjoy?
Wow. Oh gosh. I think probably Epcot was a highlight for me, being the vice president of Epcot. Just, that came up earlier, is the diversity of people you got to interact with, all the different cultures, all the different languages, the festivals. I mean, that for me, that's one of the highlights of Epcot, is the World Showcase. That's sort of the heartbeat of that park. Mm-hmm. And
the fact that I think you started there, that's got to have like a special.
Well, yeah, that was always a big deal for me. I know how to park cars here. I know how to run the park too. And I did as well as I could. But the Flower and Garden Festival, the Food and Wine Festival, that was just such a great atmosphere. And that was a fun job, and being able to go to the restaurants and meet all the different people. And actually, I'd been at Epcot. I was probably there for maybe 2 months as the vice president, and I got a call that Paul Bocuse was actually coming to visit and wanted to have lunch with me, because he had heard that I was from Lyon. Well, my wife was from Lyon. He's from Lyon. That's where he grew up.
Okay.
And so the best moment I had was calling my mother-in-law in France, who's now 88 years old and just a firecracker, and telling her that I was having lunch with Paul Bocuse, and she just couldn't believe it. Like, she was like, amazing. How did this go that he grew up in the city that I'm from, and my American son-in-law is having lunch with him? But we had a great lunch and visited with each other, and he invited us to his restaurant. And so I was able to take my mother-in-law about 6 months later to his restaurant in France. And we came around the corner, and he was standing there in his chef's outfit and his hat, and met my mother-in-law, and he kissed her on both cheeks. We got some great photos together. So I was like the son-in-law rock star for the next year. So that was good.
That's one way to put points out on the board with the mother-in-law.
There you go. And I was also, back in the day, when I was the operations manager in Future World, I went up and helped them clean Spaceship Earth. So I was able to stand on top of Spaceship Earth and pressure wash it one evening, which was pretty cool.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
that'd be fun. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
So I love this question from Dan. He says, was there ever a time you had to make a business decision that you felt didn't make business sense, but it did make sense for the guest experience, and how'd that turn out?
Yeah, well, there are, there's lots of those. And one of the things I talk about when I do keynote speeches is too many companies try to manage the exception. They put rules in place because they're worried about the 0.001% who are not going to follow the rules. And I saw that play out a lot. We would tell, cast members, if you want to do anything for a guest, you have to call a manager. And, we have the no strings attached cards, right? If you want to recover a situation for someone, a cast member can fill those out for up to $50 of value. And once we started to introduce that, the team that does all the auditing said, well, what if someone starts to give stuff away to their friends and everything? And we said, only you all would come up with that. We're trying to empower 70,000 cast members to create these magical moments for people when we don't get it right. And I said, how about if you're tracking it and the average cast member gives out like one every 6 months and someone gives out 20, we'll go talk to them. Let's do that. So, I mean, but a lot of times we don't want to put these great programs in place because we imagine the one person who's going to work around and make it not work. And I'm like, don't worry about those people. Worry about everyone else along the way.
That does do the right thing. Yeah.
Yeah. Do the right thing. It's good business. The other thing, and we're just, my wife and I right now, we're putting together a undergrad college course that we're going to be selling to universities. And my book is going to be the textbook for this. And our daughter just helped write all the case studies and quizzes and final exams for it. And we're teeing it up. And we have a case study on Disney's Magical Express and talking about that. And I remember when I was the All-Star Resort, I remember getting a call that said, hey, we're going to roll out this new program. And basically, we're going to mail luggage tags to people's houses anywhere in the United States. And then when the luggage gets to the airport in Orlando, we're going to sort it. We're going to put it in trucks. We're going to deliver it to the hotels, and then we're going to take it to their room. And I was like, wow, okay. And then they said, and we're going to have free buses, shuttle buses to take people directly from the airport to Walt Disney World. I said, wow, that's cool. I said, how much is that going to cost? They said, well, it's free. I was like, free? I don't know. I wasn't really, I didn't have my finance degree, but I knew that free is not a great way to make money. But when you started digging back and looking at it, the fact that people now had this differentiated service, and when they don't have a rental car, guess where they go? They don't go anywhere. They stay at Walt Disney World and they stay on property. And so it was a great decision and it was a great differentiator. And we had a lot of success with it. It was controversial with, taxi companies and car rental companies and that kind of thing. But I remember that, sometimes strategy is you have to make bigger decisions if you're trying to get something done. So those were a couple that I remember right off the bat.
Yeah, and I'm assuming Magical Express is profitable from all the additional money spent on property, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Jason asked, what are the top 3 leadership skills you learned from working at Disney?
That's a great one. Gosh, there are 3 actually. Because I just wrote about these. We're also the university course, and I write about this in the book. I talk about moral fitness, which I didn't mention, our leading self. And moral fitness, the way I define it is simply, what are your values? And once you decide what your values are, what do you actually do to demonstrate those values? Because that's what your actions speak what you believe in. If you are, if your value is to be an honest person, when you find a wallet on the ground, you return the wallet. You do these things. These are the things that prove that you have these values. And this is not about good or bad or anything else. It's just what you demonstrate is who you are. And so I thought a lot about that when I was working at Disney, and I kind of settled in on 3 things. And these values I came up with, these leadership traits, I just didn't make these up. It was years of watching leaders. I think we all have role models in our life, and I had lots of role models at Disney. And when you see someone, you kind of, I'd say to myself, well, I'd like to emulate that person. They're impressive to me. I respect them and I value them, and I want to be like them. And I'm going to take the best of what they do and try to incorporate that into my leadership style. And over time, you end up creating your own leadership style and your own reputation. So the 3 things I learned along the way was, first of all, you have to respect everyone as a human being. And I know everyone says, well, that's a softball one, Dan, but at Disney, especially, people, if you're in a professional, if you're wearing a shirt and slacks versus a costume, often you get treated differently because people see that you maybe where you are in the ranks. And we see that happen all the time in the world. People think if they have more money or they have a bigger house or a nicer car or whatever, that somehow they have this different level. But my wife and I have traveled all over the world. We've been everywhere. And I've just seen people from all over the world that I respect people, how hard they work. Just they're trying to raise their kids and have a great family. And that respect, that's how my parents raised me. So I was always, my dad always reminded me, Dad, you have a big job now. Don't let it get to your head. Remember, you're just the kid that was parking cars, and don't forget that. And I think that was important. The second thing was, and this is what I really wanted my reputation to be at Disney, being accessible and approachable. Once again, when you let people talk to you, let people get in touch with you, they start to trust you, and they start to tell you things. They start to tell you things you don't always want to hear, but they tell you things that need to be fixed. And I was able to do that. I had a confidential voicemail at all the parks I worked in. People could call me directly. My voicemail had my cell phone number on it. It still does. If you go to my website, my cell phone number's on there. And people say, "What are you, crazy? People are going to," I'm like, I don't know why would people want to crank call me. If they do, then I'll change the number eventually. But I want it easy for people to reach me, because sometimes a cast member would have a concern, and there's a big bureaucracy at Disney. And if they're calling people, I told them, if you're calling people and you don't know who to call, you call me, and I will follow up on what you have to say. And you'd hear from people. So that I'd walk the park often. I ate in the cafeteria. It was just important to be out there with the team and make sure I was visible. And not only did it help me learn what was going on, but it role modeled that to the other managers. Because when the managers see the vice president doing that, they start saying, "Well, heck, we better be out there too if Dan shows up." So there's accountability here. You can't tell everyone to do it, not do it yourself. And then the last thing was, I think, developing people. As a leader, you have a responsibility not only to do your job, but to develop others and make them better and get them ready for their promotions and that next level. And a lot of that spending time with them, counseling them, teaching them, giving them really hard feedback they might not want to hear, recognizing and rewarding them when they do it well. And those are the three big leadership traits. When you invest in people, they'll do anything for you. If you're approachable and accessible, you'll find out about a lot of things that no one's telling you about. And if you just remind yourself to have a basic respect for people, no matter who they are. I know that's a basic thing, but we forget that sometimes because we tend to judge people maybe sometimes the wrong way. So great question. Long answer to a short question.
Yeah, but it's still a really great question. Always focus on people. And so Justin asked a similar question that'll probably have a similar answer here, but he goes, any tips on leading lower wage employees at the beginning of their career? And how did you lead cast members to grow and perform at their highest level without being able to offer higher pay?
Yeah, that's a great question, Justin. I think this is one of those, I think I've changed a little bit my point of view on this over time. There was a while there where I just sort of thought, okay, if I pay attention to people enough, if I motivate them, if I recognize them, I can get anyone to be a great performer. Bless you.
Thank you.
And what I
didn't make the mute button.
People have different mindsets. And there's a great book by Carol Dweck called Mindset. And she talks about people with growth mindsets and fixed mindsets. And basically, people with growth mindsets, they have an inner motivation. They drive themselves. They are always looking to get better. And no matter what obstacle you put in their way, whether you help them or not, they're always going to figure out how to, kind of get to what they want to get to, because they get knocked down, they get up again. I don't know if this is wired into them and their genetics. I don't know if it's how they're raised. It's probably a lot of both. But what I concluded was, I tell people is, I will work as hard as you will for your development. If you want to read a book every week and come talk to me about it, I'll be happy to do that. But I'm not going to work harder than you are in your own development. And it's easy to find 100 excuses not to have opportunities, not to get those breaks, not to get that promotion. But people have a growth mindset. They don't have excuses. They just go back. They keep going and getting better and better. So, and once again, this is not about being promoted and making more money. This is about being sort of fulfilled in your job. And I think we mistake that sometimes also. We always think, well, everyone wants to be promoted. Well, some people are great in the jobs they're doing, and they're doing exactly what they should be doing. Now, over time, this is an issue in the service industry. You probably, if you have a spouse and a couple of kids, you probably can't make enough money in a lot of markets to be able to maintain your family in the service industry at a frontline job like that. And it's what I found is during union negotiations, this would come up as an issue. It was hard to address because it was true, but it was more of a global economic issue than it was a Disney issue. But we always had that conversation. And, I don't want to get into politics here, but, Bernie Sanders a few years ago, he put the heat on Disneyland and said, you all need to get to a minimum wage that's acceptable. And I think he guilted it into them, and they finally did that. I think that was probably the right thing to do, because the cast members bring a lot of value to Disney, but we do live in a capital society, and anyone can do whatever they want. They just got to make the right decisions along the way. But I think this idea of being a self-starter is extremely important. And I don't think you can motivate people. You can create the right environment for them, the right culture, and the right for them to thrive in. And then it's going to be up to them whether they want to be great at what they do or not. And we try to hire great people. That's the key to everything. When you hire great people, you don't have to worry about much. They just do a great job. And that's sort of the secret sauce for Disney.
Awesome. And let me come back in, and Lauren asked a question here. What was your goal to travel? Or was it your goal to travel and progress up the management ranks, or did you kind of fall into it? Or was this something that you considered a dream job? What was the aspirational piece of it like?
Yeah, well, I'll start with the end of the thing. What was your dream job as a child? My dream job, I wanted to be Isaac the bartender on the Love Boat. I don't know if you all remember the Love Boat, because it's a long time ago. But Isaac was a bartender, and he was always hanging out. In the evening, he was downstairs at that one bar, and then during the day, he was up at that bar near the pool. And I just thought that was the coolest job ever. And I told my wife one day, I said, someday when I really do retire, I just love to be a bartender somewhere in some little sleepy bar and talk to people. So that's my dream. We actually have a concept. Eventually, we might open a bar one day, and we've already come up with the concept. It's going to be called Wisdom. And when you go in there, there's going to be people are going to write quotes on the wall, or they're going to put things about quotes and things they've learned over time. And we're going to have conversations. And when younger people come in, we're going to share our wisdom with them and buy them a drink. So that's our idea. But getting back to the question, what was the question, by the way? It was, my goal. Yeah. I'll tell you, every time I got promoted, I was dumbstruck. I never knew what I wanted to do. I studied political science in college because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and ended up working in parking at Disney just until I figured out what I wanted to do. And 26 years went by. And I think I picked Disney because I like highly structured environments, which Disney is. Everything is laid out very clearly, and I enjoy that. And Disney has a high regard and respect for how people are treated. You're held accountable not only to getting the results, but how you get those results. And I really enjoyed that. And I saw a lot of companies where people were not treated with respect. And that was one of my hot buttons. And I saw that Disney did a pretty good job doing that. But I never had a career goal, a career path. And I think when I got promoted to be an executive general manager at Disney, I was just like, all right, if nothing else happens, I'm good. I've done way more than I ever expected. And I just, like I said, 19 different jobs along the way. I was always interested in just getting more diverse experiences. I wasn't necessarily focused on, moving up per se. I just wanted to do more. Now, of course, getting promoted is great. You get more money. Money allows you to do things. I talk to people and they're like, well, it's not really for the money. I'm like, yeah, it is. We work for money so we can go do Disney Vacation Club and we can go do things. I mean, that's fine. But along the path, I just always focused on the job I had. And I realized if you focus on the job you have and you do a great job, you're at least going to get on the short list. And that short list is you're going to get an opportunity to do something else later on. And I just, I'd gotten great experiences. I had great family support. And so I had a lot of great things working for me to be able to, do something like that.
Awesome. And then Dan has a question here, and I think this is going to be one of our last questions tonight. I think Sandy has one teed up as well. But what was your biggest barrier to overcome to see your vision or plan through? And how did you overcome that barrier? And what are some common barriers you have seen trip other people up?
Yeah.
It's a barrier question.
Yeah. One of the barriers I always had, and it's interesting. Once again, Valor and I were talking today about this. She just got qualified to do Myers-Briggs. She's a practitioner, and she was teaching me. And I'm kind of familiar with Myers-Briggs, but she was getting into the depth about how it works and kind of the behaviors and what your preferences are. And one of the things from my point of view, I always loved being in the moment in the operation with people. I mean, for me, like Christmas time and the busy periods when all the meetings were canceled, that was the best time of year for me. I'm like, if it could be like this all the time, I'd have the perfect job. So I really had to get better at disciplining myself to not only think about today, but think about next week, next month, and 5 years from now, and being able to look at both of those things. And I think when you get in some of these jobs, well, not even these jobs, I think in life we have to think about that. Something my dad talks about, which I think is great advice, is what is something that you're going to focus on today that's not going to pay off for 5, 10, 20, 40 years from now? Your 401k, raising your children and having those hard conversations as you raise them, these investments you're making along the way to plan for the future. And I always struggled with that, is being able to think strategically about long-term and being passionate about what's going on today and toggling between those two. But I think they're really important traits to have. Because once again, I was 22 years old. I'm like, 401k, why do I need a 401k? I'm never going to be 51. Here we are. So I think that was something that I learned along the way. And then, I think the other thing, because I love working with people, and early in my career, learning how to give feedback to people was something I struggled with. I'm a pretty positive guy, and I really had to learn, sometimes you have to have very difficult conversations with people. And sometimes, and it's not personal. It's not about them. You have a responsibility though, as a leader. And if someone is not performing the role, not only are their job in jeopardy, but they're putting everyone on their team in jeopardy. And if you're not willing to step up and take on that responsibility, you shouldn't be in a leadership role. And those are difficult conversations to have, but you have to overcome that because you've signed up for this. And once again, coming back to that respect thing, no matter how people perform, what decisions they make, if I had to terminate somebody, I still had full respect for them because they're still a person. And that was always, I couldn't sleep the night before I had to have a conversation like that or terminate somebody. And, Valerie always reminded me, she said, Dan, that's because you care about people. And that's a good thing. I'm glad you feel sick the night before, because it means that, this is a hard decision for you. You're making it. And I think that's what they talk about, maybe courage and bravery is. You're afraid, you go anyway. And that's a big thing I had to overcome in my career, because you're put in situations sometimes you got no training for, but people are looking to you for confidence, looking for you for an answer. And so you just had to put it out there and do what you thought was right.
Awesome. And Sandy, you had a final question for us tonight?
So that kind of leads into my question. I was wondering how, like, for example, with Hollywood Studios and how you did all
we lost audio.
Lost Sandy. She told me what her question was. I think in Hollywood Studios, to like plan something so much and then maybe it not work out the way that you planned it because you had your fingerprints all over it. Yeah. I think that was her question.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's one I talked about on a few podcasts. Is we worked on the new Star Wars land for 2 years. And one day someone called and said, we're not doing that. And so it all got, Tatooine and that whole thing got put on the shelf, and we started over. And that was hard. And the Imagineers were incredible. They came in the next day. Oh, this. I can't believe they all complained. They went out that night. They had some beers, came in the next morning. Let's get started. Okay. I'm like, let's get started. They're like, yeah, this happens all the time. You work on something, we're getting paid. Let's go figure out what this is going to be. So talk about the right mindset. They didn't care. They're just like, we worked for 2 years on it. Someday they're going to bring it out of the vault and show it, but we got to get back.
2 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it was really, it was impressive, their mindset and how they thought about that. They just bounced right back and we got back to work again. So it was cool.
Well, hopefully I don't have to wait too long to see the plans for my beloved Tatooine. Okay.
Yeah. I don't think in our lifetime, Chad. We can only dream.
We can only dream, huh?
Right.
I mean, I could see them not building it, but at least coming out and telling us what they were going to do, right?
Yeah. But I like that, how you guys build off each other. So they inspired you, to like just move forward. Yeah, cool.
It was that was a great thing about working, at Disney. I think you all do this, what you're doing on this podcast, you get to meet, you have this community, you get to meet people with different backgrounds and share ideas. And I think that's one of the things I loved about Disney. Oh, Sandy, I had the best answer to your question.
Oh, we still can't hear her.
We lost power.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
that's big.
Yep.
Oh, well, whatever. No, my question was, for example, when you were dealing with Hollywood Studios and you had done all the planning for what was going to be the Star Wars area, and then they kind of put it on hold.
Yeah, Mickey remembered it.
How do you deal with that as far as like keeping not only the positivity up for yourself, but for an entire team of people who have been working for ages on this project and it doesn't come to fruition?
Well, yeah, I was just talking about that. I was actually the one that they pulled up. I was like bummed out because I hadn't done a lot of this development work before. And the Imagineering team said, oh, yeah, this happens all the time. They went home, they complained, they came in the next day and like, let's get started again. And like it never happened. Very professional. It was impressive. Yeah.
Awesome. Is there any inside stories that you've got from the Tron ride that's coming up that you can share, Dan?
Oh gosh. It was really interesting. The cool thing about it was it's always nice when it's been built once already.
Mm-hmm.
So you can learn what worked and what didn't work, and how if you got to do this again, would you do anything different? And I think the ride system's fantastic. It's going to be the same. But we had some learnings on the engineering side, how to configure the back of house to be more efficient. And one of the big things, I don't know if they're going to implement this, but in Shanghai, because the Tron is one of the few attractions at Disney you can't take your bag on with you, right? Because it's a light cycle, so you have to leave it somewhere, like kind of like Universal. They have to put everything in the lockers, and they had to build. I mean, I don't know how many hundreds, thousands of lockers in Shanghai because of the capacity of that attraction. And then they had to add all these people to manage it, and just became it's a big deal. All the capacity they had to use, plus people are using the lockers who aren't riding it because it's a free locker for the day, and it just logistically it was a big deal. So we started chatting and said, okay, how do we solve the locker issue? We don't want to spend all this money on all these lockers. We just want people who are in line or on the attraction, and we want to hold their bag. So we brainstormed. And what we concluded was, and like I said, we designed it in, I think it's in, we'll see when it opens, but we designed that once you get up into the queue line, there's a wall of lockers. You put your stuff in there and close it. And when you leave the exit side, it's actually it's a locker that has two doors, one on either side. And so you open the other side and you pull your bag back out again. So it slides through. So I thought that was a really cool solution to that. And you can use your magic band to open and close your lockers. And so we'll see if that comes out.
Fantastic.
But that was pretty neat. But it's obviously you've seen the ride and online in Shanghai, and it's awesome. It's a great ride. I was always surprised that we picked Tron, because usually we pick stuff with really strong storylines. And I love Tron, but obviously it wasn't one of Disney's hits. Although they did do a remake, but I think just the light and the way they've been able to just kind of represent that whole thing is pretty compelling.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Dan, I want to thank you for being on the show today, and I want to
my pleasure.
Come in and just throw up some summary links here as well. So culture-kingdom.com, that's where they can buy the book that's in that corner, right? Mm-hmm. And How's the Culture in Your Kingdom? More leadership stories from you. And follow up with you would either be culture-kingdom.com or cockerellconsulting.com. Your podcast, Come Rain or Shine, I listen to it every Thursday. Yours and Rob Lott's. Back when I had a commute, were my Thursday morning commutes. Right. And really like that. Want to give that a shout out as well. And then you've got a virtual tour coming up through the parks. I put the link to it down below. Give us a little bit of a story on that.
Yeah, so we're brainstorming in this COVID time. We were supposed to go to Australia. I mean, we had all these great plans that got canceled just like everyone else. And if you have a growth mindset, you say, you know what? If life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. So what are we going to do? And so we started talking about doing a webinar and actually taking a virtual walk through the park and attaching each land to a part of the book. And really, so talking about the park, telling some stories about some running the Magic Kingdom and some insider information that was kind of some fun things I learned along the way, but then also referring back to the book. So for example, Old Main Street USA is all about preparing for your day at the Magic Kingdom, your adventure, and also leading yourself and preparing for your adventure in life. And we go through a lot of the things I talked about today. And then we talk about some of the hidden gems on Main Street. I tell some operational stories of things that we dealt with during that time. And then we move into Adventureland and we just move our way through the park. And it's it's some for Disney fans, some for people who are looking just more leadership advice and how to think about their businesses. And we're just combining those things. So it's a 90-minute webinar and a 30-minute Q&A at the end. And Valerie is the hosts it. So she's the MC and I'm the speaker. And so we dual do it. And so we like to really, as I told you in the last time, being married for 27 years is one thing. Working together is a whole nother ball game. So we've come a long way in the past 2 years to learn how to respect each other professionally. And she provides me a lot of feedback, like more than I want. And I never,
it's her job. She's your wife.
In the moment, I never like it. And 24 hours later, I always end up thanking her for being so direct. She said, look, you said you wanted me to push you. I'm like, I know, but not shove me. She goes, look, I'm going to, so she's been a key. I couldn't have done any of this without her. And so we really are enjoying our time now, actually running our own company. That's been a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, I'm looking forward to that event. I'm going to end up being there as well. And I hope everybody else can join us there as well. Good. So, and I'll just throw a couple of more comments up here as well. Justin was saying, I love the idea of work as hard as you can for your own growth, or I will work as hard as you do and look for the growth mindset. Dan says, thanks for another great show, Chad. I always enjoy following along, listening, and being part of the My DVC Points community. Lauren says, thank you so much, Dan. Great interview. Nancy saying, I really enjoyed the stories, Dan. I'm looking forward to reading your book.
Thanks, Nancy.
And yeah, Lisa says, thank you for a great show. Can't wait to buy the book, and I will start listening to the podcast.
Awesome.
That is so awesome. So
you have something really good going here. I'm telling you, I'm so impressed by the production and the teamwork you all have. It's pretty slick.
Oh, well, we work pretty hard at it, Dan. I'm not going to lie. Okay.
Yeah.
And we've got our awesome producer, Gina, who I'm going to throw into the stream.
Hi.
Hey, Gina.
Couldn't do it without her. So, and as well, everybody, thank you for tuning into the show. I need to do the sponsor plug as well. So thank you to dvcrentalstore.com for sponsoring our platform. If you're looking to go to Disney right now, they've got thousands of guaranteed reservations out there that are dirt cheap. I looked at a Copper Creek one for a week or so from now at about $12 a point. And my gosh, my dues are like $8. Okay. Plus what I paid for the points. So these are like, get it at wholesale cost level stuff. dvcrentalstore.com. Let them know you heard about them here on the My DVC Points podcast and platform. So that being said and done, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you, Dan, for coming. Thank you to our lovely co-hosts as well, Sandy and Vicky. And as always, our great producer, Gina. So everybody, thanks for tuning in. Have a great night. I'm going to roll the Patreon credits and we will be out of here. So, okay.